She arrived in a flash of thunder, a porcelain doll with a rebellious heart. Her story is not a fairy tale about finding fame, but a ghost story about escaping it. The narrative of Taylor Momsen is a deeply human drama about a soul trapped in a gilded cage, finding liberation in the raw, unapologetic roar of a guitar. Her journey is a testament to the unyielding power of authenticity in a world obsessed with artifice. Before the sneering, smoky-eyed rock goddess emerged, there was simply a child from suburban St. Louis, Missouri. Taylor Michelle Momsen was born on July 26, 1993, to Michael and Colette Momsen. It was a family rooted in the quiet rhythms of middle-class life, where normalcy was the standard. They were not artists, not performers, yet a subtle reverence for the arts permeated the household. This environment, saturated with the idea of performance, became the hothouse where Taylor's destiny would begin to bloom. Perhaps too soon. By the tender age of 3, she was already a tiny professional, her face plastered across national commercials for Shake and Bake, a startlingly bright-eyed figure in a world of manufactured smiles. Her younger sister Sloane would follow a similar path, but it was Taylor who possessed a singular intensity, a precocious understanding of the camera's gaze. Her father, Michael, would later reflect on the unsettling ease with which she handled the pressures of auditions. She just had this focus, he said. Even as a little girl, she knew what she was doing. It wasn't play acting for her. It was a job. This early exposure to the cutthroat world of show business, however, came at a steep price. While other children were learning to ride bikes and navigate playground politics, Taylor was on a plane to New York, her small frame dwarfed by a suitcase filled with scripts and headshots. She spent her formative years not in a classroom with friends, but on sets with adults, a world of craft services and 12-hour days. The world of Hollywood was her playground, but it was a playground without other children. It was a place of work, not of play. This isolation, this perpetual feeling of being an outsider, became the crucible in which her later defiance would be forged. The experiences left a deep, psychological scar. She was a professional long before she was a person, her identity shaped by the demands of a script rather than the natural curiosity of childhood. This lack of a normal childhood, a foundation of simple, unstructured time, became a central theme in her life's struggle for authenticity. The role that would forever cement her place in the public consciousness arrived in 2000. It was the part of Cindy Lou, who the impossibly pure, wide-eyed girl from Dr. Seuss's classic, How the Grinch Stole Christmas. At 7 years old, she was thrust onto a massive, elaborate soundstage, sharing scenes with Jim Carrey, an acting titan at the peak of his manic, larger-than-life powers. The experience was a dizzying kaleidoscope of green fur, prosthetic makeup, and the bewildering scale of a Hollywood production. The film was a smash hit, and Taylor's face, a beacon of childhood innocence, was suddenly everywhere. The public fell in love with the sweet little girl who had the power to melt the Grinch's icy heart. But even in her triumphant moment, a quiet, internal conflict was brewing. She was the picture of saccharine sweetness on screen, yet off camera. She was already feeling the stirrings of a different identity, one that yearned for something more raw, more real. The gap between her on-screen persona and her true self was beginning to widen, a chasm that would eventually swallow her whole. The shadow of Cindy Lou, who, an image of perfect, innocent joy, became a curse she would spend the next 2 decades trying to outrun. The success of The Grinch wasn't a launching pad for a conventional child star career. Instead, it became a gilded cage. Taylor was a commodity, her life a series of auditions and callbacks, her identity defined by the characters she played. She appeared in films like We Were Soldiers and Spy Kids 2, The Island of Lost Dreams, small supporting roles that kept her in the orbit of Hollywood without truly allowing her to shine. She was a professional, a working actor, but she was never truly Taylor. The years of auditions, rejections, and the constant travel began to wear on her, creating a chasm between the public's perception of her and her true self. "I was always trying to be someone else," she would later reflect. "I was playing parts. I never got to just be myself." This inner turmoil, this sense of being an imposter in her own life, began to manifest itself in quiet acts of rebellion. She was drawn to music, to the snarling guitars and defiant poetry of grunge and punk rock. It was a world that felt authentic, a stark contrast to the polished, manufactured world she inhabited. Her bedroom, her sanctuary, became a shrine to bands like Nirvana and Soundgarden, their anthems of alienation and angst speaking a language her young soul understood. This was a private rebellion, a silent war she was fighting within herself, fueled by the music of artists who had also felt like outsiders. The turning point, the moment the world began to witness the slow emergence of her true self, arrived in 2007. She was cast as the lead in a new television series, a glossy, high-society drama called Gossip Girl. The show was a cultural phenomenon, a weekly dose of scandal and fashion that captivated a generation. As Jenny Humphrey, a wide-eyed freshman navigating the treacherous social landscape of Manhattan's elite, Taylor was once again cast in the role of the innocent outsider. But as the seasons progressed, so did her character's evolution. Jenny shed her sweet suburban skin, trading in her pastel cardigans for smoky eyeliner, ripped fishnets, and a defiant sneer. The line between Taylor and Jenny began to blur. The show's creator, Josh Schwartz, would later admit, Taylor's personal style was so strong, so clear, that it started to influence the character. She was becoming this rock and roll kid in real life, and we couldn't ignore that. This synergy, however, was a double-edged sword. While it gave Taylor a platform to explore her burgeoning identity, it also trapped her in the public's eye. Every new piercing, every darker shade of lipstick was scrutinized and sensationalized. The media portrayed her as a troubled teen, a rebel without a cause, a narrative she felt was both reductive and unfair. The public who had seen her grow up on screen felt a sense of betrayal. The sweet girl from The Grinch was gone, replaced by a sullen, angry young woman. They didn't understand that this wasn't a phase. It was her true self, finally fighting its way to the surface. The escalating demands of Gossip Girl became a source of increasing friction. Taylor's true passion lay not in front of a camera, but behind a microphone. She had formed a band, a raw, aggressive outfit called The Pretty Reckless. The music was a sonic assault of heavy guitars and guttural vocals, a far cry from the pop-infused world of her TV persona. She was a different person on stage, commanding, charismatic, a force of nature. This duality, this push and pull between her acting career and her musical ambitions, reached a breaking point. In 2011, she made a decision that shocked Hollywood. She left Gossip Girl for good. The departure was abrupt, a statement of fierce independence. For Taylor, it wasn't a choice between two careers, but a choice between two lives. She chose the one that felt authentic, the one where she could write her own story, sing her own words. "I had to choose," she later said in an interview. "I couldn't be a fake TV character and a real rock musician at the same time." The public, who had grown up with her as a child star and a TV sweetheart, was bewildered. Critics were skeptical. They saw her as another actress attempting to cash in on a musical side project, a momentary whim. But The Pretty Reckless was not a whim. It was an oral exorcism. Their debut album, Light Me Up, was a torrent of pent-up anger and frustration, a sonic diary of a young woman grappling with the suffocating pressures of fame. The music was heavy, unapologetic, and infused with a palpable sense of authenticity. She was no longer a character, she was a creator. The band began to tour relentlessly, playing small clubs and then larger venues, building a dedicated, fervent fan base one show at a time. The public's perception of her slowly began to shift. The troubled actress narrative was replaced by a grudging respect for her tenacious pursuit of her passion. The music wasn't a gimmick, it was a mission, it was a lifeline. She was no longer a child actor, a teen idol, or a TV star. She was a musician, a songwriter, a performer. She had finally found her voice, not just literally, but metaphorically. She was no longer a character in someone else's story. She was the author of her own. This marked a profound turning point. She had successfully completed the metamorphosis, shedding the skin of her past and emerging as the artist she was always meant to be. Her personal life, however, remained a fiercely guarded secret. She had learned early on the dangers of exposing herself to the merciless glare of the media. Relationships were kept out of the public eye. Her private life a fortress she rarely allowed anyone to breach. She spoke of heartbreak and loss in her lyrics, but rarely in interviews. The emotional toll of her childhood, of the years spent chasing a destiny she hadn't chosen, had left a lasting mark. She was fiercely independent, almost pathologically so. She didn't seek validation from the outside world. She found it in the roar of the crowd, in the communal catharsis of a live performance. Her career with the Pretty Reckless continued its upward trajectory. The band's second album, Going to Hell, was an even greater critical and commercial success. Songs like Heaven Knows and Messed Up World became anthems of disillusionment and rebellion, speaking to a generation that felt lost and unheard. She was no longer a mystery. She was an icon, a rare breed of artist who had successfully navigated the treacherous path from child star to rock and roll royalty. But success, as she would soon discover, did not inoculate her from tragedy. In 2017, Taylor faced a devastating blow with the suicide of Chris Cornell, the legendary frontman of Soundgarden and one of her greatest musical heroes. The loss was profound, a gut-wrenching shock to the system. Cornell had been a mentor, a spiritual guide, and his music had been a source of comfort for her throughout her life. In her grief, she found a new, even deeper connection to his work and to the raw, emotional power of music. But just a few months later, the universe dealt her another, even more crushing blow. Kato Khandwala, her longtime producer, collaborator, and close friend, died in a tragic motorcycle accident. Kato was more than a producer. He was a creative partner, a confidant, the person who understood her artistic vision implicitly. The loss of both these pivotal figures in her life sent her into a spiral of depression and despair. "I literally fell into a hole that I didn't know how to get out of," she would later confide. "I stopped writing. I stopped listening to music. I just stopped." The vibrant, defiant artist was silenced, her spirit broken by the weight of two unbearable losses. It was in this darkness, however, that the seeds of her greatest work were planted. Music, the very thing she had abandoned, became her only way back. She slowly began to write again, pouring her grief, her anger, and her pain into her art. The result was the album, Death by Rock and Roll. It was an album born of immense sorrow, a poignant and powerful tribute to the men she had lost. But it was not just a requiem. It was a defiant celebration of life, of music, and of the enduring power of rock and roll to heal and to save. The album was a massive success, both critically and commercially, and became a testament to her resilience. It was the moment she truly became a survivor, not just an artist. She had transformed her deepest pain into her greatest triumph, proving that even in the face of death, the music never truly dies. Today, Taylor Momsen is a woman who has found her peace. She is an artist who has navigated the treacherous waters of fame, survived, and emerged stronger. Her journey is not a cautionary tale, but a story of triumph. It is a story of a young woman who refused to be a product, who fought to be a person, and who found her true self in the electrifying chaos of a rock and roll stage. From the sweet-faced Cindy Lou Who to the defiant, snarling frontwoman, Taylor Momsen has completed one of the most remarkable transformations in modern pop culture. She has shown the world that a legacy isn't inherited, it's built, one defiant note at a time. The quiet girl in the big green hat was just waiting for her chance to be loud. And when she finally got it, she made sure everyone heard her roar,